So now that many of us are getting older, we're getting interested in how we can extend our lifespan, but in a curious way, the more important thing is how to extend our health span and what the advantages are of what strategies are worth making an effort for in this way so that we can uh, do the best with what we have and not get too crazy about it. So the this company Prolon does this fasting mimicking diet, which is very well researched and well supported. And one of the simple ways of doing calorie restriction to improve health. And the guy who created it is named Walter Longo. He's a PhD gerontology scientist, and he very thoughtful man. And then the other fellow who's taken this a little step further by saying, what is it that we're trying to optimize, is Mark Houston. And his simple concept is that that a person is really only as old as their blood vessels. And so the point of trying to figure out how to help people and guide people, from my perspective, is how do you create metrics measurements that a person can utilize for self-feedback going forward so that they can fine-tune the process of optimizing their health and their health span. So the vascular system lends itself to many metrics that are easy to obtain, not particularly expensive to obtain, and therefore a good proxy for overall aspect of aging. But as you will see, there are other metrics that are also easy and inexpensive to obtain that are meaningful as well. So vascular aging is characterized by a progressive stiffness of the arteries. In a sense, it's a paradigm for the stiffness we have with aging in general. The loss of flexibility and the loss of strength is a loss of arterial elasticity and arterial compliance, and an increase in pulse wave velocity, which means every time the heart squeezes, the intensity of that pulse wave creates a microtrauma to the vascular system. And so the more intense it is, the more it advances the aging process. And then there's an increase in augmentation index, which is another measure in systolic blood pressure, which is a simple measure in pulse pressure, etc. And every time there's a pulse, that cumulative effect sends messages at a cellular level to our genetics and keeps creating changes and alterations in the vascular system that ultimately leads to vascular diseases like coronary artery disease or heart failure or stroke, etc. So there are a myriad of structural and functional changes in the lining of the artery, the endothelium, and then in the muscular wall that surrounds that lining, and then in the connective tissue wall that surrounds the muscles. Create alterations in the expression of our genes that lead to this aging process. And we have what are called nutrient sensing pathways and that react to the nutrients in our body, and which is why I think the SpectraCell is interesting and why Mark Houston does as well. The issue of insulin resistance is very important and a great accelerator of all aspects of aging and chronic disease, including cancer and Alzheimer's disease. The little organelles that make energy, the mitochondria, start to become less efficient. The products from making energy, called reactive oxygen species, increase. There's subsequent damage to the encoding molecules, the DNA, telomeres, which have to do with cellular reproduction, shorten, and the ability of the cell to cleanse itself, called autophagy, is impaired. This is a little technical, and I'm not going to spend any time on it, except to say they have come so far in knowing what precise molecules that mediate these aging processes can be observed and measured over time, and how to optimize the aging process is to, block the effects of TOR and et cetera, improve sirtuin activity, et cetera. So you can increase life expectancy in all the animal models studied through these mechanisms by inhibiting TOR, stimulation of sirtuin, increase of AMPK, the energy sensor, which blocks the TOR, and blocking too much insulin and IGF-1, etc. All these things are highly measurable and are done in research labs. We don't do them in the clinic. But we know that, interestingly, dietary restriction, fasting, and etc. can have the beneficial effects we want at a molecular level on all of these processes. And not only that, but it increases the production of stem cells, which create healthy new cells that line our arteries and occupy our brain, decreases oxidative stress, inflammation, and autoimmune disease, increases the small mitochondria, the little organelles that make energy, to make energy more effectively and to increase their number in the cell, etc. So all of these phenomena are related to appropriate calorie restriction. So all of these ways, all of these strategies below are strategies for increasing stem cell production, and hence a more youthful cell that affects the lining of our bowel, the lining of our arteries, our brain cells. And they include the calorie restriction, which is not fasting, exercise, things that build up nitric oxide, which is a 2-molecule gas that has huge beneficial properties on health and, by the way, on surviving COVID. So we know, for instance, that if we we have an article that we'll not publish, but send out to everybody about how people with the SARS-CoV-1 improve when nitric oxide levels were raised. And we have specific strategies for doing that. The resveratrol, which is the extract of red wine, but of other very nice products, the quercetin we spoke of, the tocotrienols, which are a type of vitamin E, a very specialized type, red wine, and then actually prescription drugs like the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor like lisinopril or quinapril, and the angiotensin receptor blockers like olmesartan that I mentioned before, and the statin drugs like rosuvastatin that we use all the time. So, integrative medicine isn't all about how to not ever take a medicine in your life, and it isn't, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to use every tool we can to optimize our health. And, again, the beneficial effects of calorie restriction and fasting are the improvement of energy production, the upregulation of nitric oxide production, improved blood vessel support to the muscles, and increasing of adiponectin, which helps maintain good body weight, improving insulin sensitivity, and reducing inflammation. And fasting conserves cell energy by diminishing cellular growth pathways via these key nutrient sensing pathways we spoke of, and it results in increased cellular maintenance and protection, and increased activation of stress-resistant pathways, and removal and replacement of damaged cells. So it's amazing you could do this gross activity which has this effect at the cellular and the subcellular level of your body very specifically. And you can do it with the confidence that science says that it really does this and has demonstrated over and over again that it really does this. And they've just shown that intermittent fasting from dawn to sunset for 30 consecutive days was associated with anti-cancer, proteomic signature, and upregulating key regulatory proteins of glucose and lipid metabolism, circadian clock, DNA repair, etc. And I think this was looking at the Ramadan people, fasting from dawn to sunset. And that calorie restriction extends life expectancy. And this, you know, some of this is germane to us but I honestly am not sure that if we calorie restrict at our age, I'm assuming most of you are over 50, that you'll get a true increase in lifespan, but you will get for sure an increase in health span. But your children and grandchildren, if they do this, can expect to live into their late 90s and hundreds. So life expectancy with average and maximum without reducing reproductive ability increase with an average of 40% calorie restriction has been studied in all sorts of animal models, yeast worms, insects, fish, rodents, and monkeys. And the question is this for all of us: how much longer would we live if we could cure heart disease, stroke, cancer, and diabetes versus just delay aging? So we get 13 years of extended life if we were able to absolutely cure cancer, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. We'd get 30 years of extended life if we could delay aging half as effectively as we've done in mice. And the science is gaining more and more momentum and force in coming to grips with this. And again, I say this over and over again, it's for us, we can hope to improve our health span, but for our children and grandchildren, we should be able, if we can convince them to pay attention at an earlier age, improve their lifespan and health span. So they've done these studies at the University of Southern California with the fasting mimicking diet, and it works by inhibiting the activity of the major pro-aging enzymes and metabolic pathways, which cause the two major changes: the entry of many cells and tissues into a shielded mode, which involves the activation of protective and reparative enzymes, and the destruction of damaged intracellular organelles and cells, followed by the activation of stem cells and the regeneration and rejuvenation of a wide range of cells and tissue. The fasting mimicking diet was developed by Walter Longo as a way of sort of making it available to people to do this in a way that was science-based, but not so difficult that you couldn't work. I work all week when I do this, and I've done it 12 times. And I think I didn't want to do it during this COVID crisis, but I'm getting enough confidence that I'm going to do it, I think, next week, much to my wife's chagrin, since I do much of the cooking. But the FMD combines protein restriction, mild calorie restriction, and very specific ratios of low glycemic index foods. That means foods that don't bump your blood sugar up rapidly when you take them. And this combination downregulates the body's key nutrient sensing pathways and activates cellular regeneration and rejuvenation. And it's one of the few things like this that has a true patent on how to do it, which takes a lot for the FDA to do that. So the diet consists of soups, bars, teas, drinks, snacks, and it's done for 5 consecutive days per month. And it may be done up to monthly, or it could be done quarterly or semi-annually. And it's done based upon the background health of the individual, the age of the individual, and the goal that you're trying to achieve. You know, if you're a guy like me and just trying to keep the bloat away from your belly, I do it once a month and it gets good. If I go 6 weeks, my wife starts to criticize me. So I know I can't keep going. Anyhow, and so this was a study done on 100 healthy people, and they did 3 months of unrestricted diet versus subjects who consumed the fasting mimicking diet for 5 consecutive days per month for 3 months. And the 3 fasting mimicking diet cycles reduced body weight, shrunk and total body fat, lowered blood pressure, and decreased insulin-like growth factor without any serious side effects. And after 3 months, the control diet subjects were crossed over, and it resulted again in these very great benefits. And the things that you'll see is an improvement in glucose insulin metabolism, a reduction in cholesterol and blood sugar, a reduction in inflammatory marker C-reactive protein, increase in stem cells, which are important for tissue regeneration and rejuvenation, an increase in lean body mass, bone density, and muscle mass, and reduction in body weight, and particularly in abdominal fat and visceral abdominal fat. And again, this is just a graphic showing the kind of changes that occurred. And what's very nice about these changes is they didn't occur just immediately after those 3 cycles, but they were sustained for upwards of 8 to 12 weeks after the conclusion of those 3 cycles. So there's a sustained benefit that one achieves well after one does the 3 cycles. So what I want to point out here is this is the visceral fat, which is the pinch and inch fat. And under your muscle sheath here is the visceral fat, which is very bioactive and creates, when there's an excess, it creates the situation for insulin resistance and diabetes, and it creates the situation for inflammation throughout your body that increases the risk of cancer and heart disease. I'm going to just wait a second. I got the garbage people are here. I got to take the garbage out so they could take it out. And so this is what it looks like on a cadaver. And this is the fat in a plump person. This is subcutaneous fat. This is visceral fat. And the higher this level of visceral fat, the higher the cause of all our chronic aging diseases. Interesting, particularly to me, is there's a direct relationship between visceral fat and dementia. Judy, you're one person who doesn't have to worry about visceral fat. So then, from a weight management point of view, so from a body contour point of view, this is a very effective way to help lose fat, particularly around the waist and in the areas you don't want, without losing lean muscle mass. The people who cycle their dieting over and over and over again not only lose fat repetitively, but they lose muscle, which they do not regain. And one of the great dangers of aging is called sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass with the increase in frailty, the increase in fall risk, etc., that occurs with that. So everyone always says there's more clinical trials needed, and I have no doubt that there are. But the point is that I'm convinced that this is an extraordinarily effective way to optimize your aging process and also control body weight, but you must apply yourself to it with great regularity. And there's definite evidence that improves all aspects of cardiovascular aging, the blood pressure, the lipids, the cholesterol, the glucose metabolism, obesity, and it lowers those inflammatory markers and undesirable growth factors that we don't want as we get older. And then again, the effects of the fasting mimicking diet last up to 3 months after you stop that cycle. So it's a very big deal to me. And you know, we talk about healthy aging, we talk about all the supplements and all the craziness, but the reality is this is the first, you know, the big 3 are eating and appropriate non-eating, exercise, and adequacy of sleep. And you could take every pill in the world, but if you don't do those things right, and you pretend that they are the pills excuse you from doing those things right, you're just kidding yourself. So the main value of this diet is that beyond what any other diets offer is that it stresses the body via fasting long enough to promote the body to take appropriate cellular actions to improve health. And it produces, so, autophagy is cellular cleansing. Everyone wants to do a detox program. Our body has elaborate detox mechanisms, right? And this is what activates those detox mechanisms. So we've talked about all this. This is what the program looks like. And, you just got to get your head into it and do it. And fortunately, people like Carrie and Sarah and Jess have all done it and know how to be supportive of people, but you become your own pro at this. And so then the next question is, what do you do in between your fasting mimicking diet? And so to some degree, Carrie will speak to it from a practical application, but I'll just say, the biggies are the average everyday diet is best. The one for which there's the best science is the Mediterranean diet, which can be broadly interpreted, but generally means eating very small amounts of red meat and lots of plants, whether they're legumes, leafy vegetables, root vegetables, nuts and seeds, or grains. And then the second is time-restricted eating, which we'll go into. And then another type of diet, which is a kind of a time-restricted eating, is 5-2 diet. And this is just shows that this diet is the one where there's tons of science validating its value over the ketogenic diet and the 100 variations of ketogenic and all these other things that people tend to kind of, take off on and go crazy with. But at least the Mediterranean diet has a social, cultural history that's, thousands of years old and has now the science to back its validity. So there's a Mediterranean DASH diet for neurodegenerative delay, and it's basically a hybrid of the Mediterranean diet and what's called the dietary approach to stop hypertension DASH diet. And they've been shown to both reduce the incidence of cardiovascular problems and neurologic disease. So, this is the stuff. And then the MIND diet is from my friend Donnie Yance, who I mentioned, which incorporates the things that we spoke of, which is just his way of saying the same thing of the combination of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet. One of the things we often underestimate is how valuable restricting salt is to optimizing health. And one of the things that I've discovered is that there's a big association between autoimmune disease and excess salt intake. And so one of the first steps to helping people with autoimmune diseases is to reduce salt intake, interestingly. And this just goes on to speak to this type of diet where we're eating, high quality foods in moderation. And all the stuff Carrie teaches about, wild sourcing your food and boy, if it makes it into a lifestyle, it makes it its own pleasure. These are the bad things that are good for you: a little bit of alcohol, some coffee, tea, and chocolate. All inhibit dementia and improve brain health. I think I did everything, Carrie.
Awesome. Good job.
I'm going to take this down now, right?
Yeah, that's fine. I can put up mine now.
Stop share.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So maybe we should do just a little bit of a recap there. And Well, maybe, can you talk about that article you found yesterday about how fasting is particularly beneficial for the immune system?
Yeah, I had that article in there and I don't see it now. So was it in there?
No, it wasn't in your presentation. It's just something that you had looked at
Yeah,
yesterday.
I put it in. Hold on, I'm going to try to find it again because I put it in and then boom, it was gone.
Gotta love technology.
Yeah, well, let's see. What did I do with it now? Mm, mm, mm. See if it's here. I got so much junk in my. Well, anyhow, the article was interesting because I Googled caloric restriction and immunity, and it showed a beneficial effect on immune optimization. So that while you're doing this 5-day fast, it's not like your immune system is injured or vulnerable. In fact, it's activated. But the consequences of all the things that we spoke about, particularly the autophagy, which is this internal cellular cleansing and detox, seems to support a more well-balanced immune system. Because the immune system isn't monolithic. There are multiple components of it and multiple checks and balances. So a well-run immune system is one that's, uh, you know, uh, capable of what I call maximum resilience and flexibility. And what that article showed was that, in fact, it accomplishes that for most of us. And now I'm keep looking and looking and looking,
And I
and I'm
think
not.
they found that at day 3 out of 5. So day 3 of caloric restriction is when they found the most benefit on the immune system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the reason why Walter Longo doesn't go any further than day 5 is after day 5, you typically get some muscle loss and some of the negative benefits of caloric restriction. And plus, 5 days is enough, right?
Yeah. So this was from the Journal of Proteomics. So I did quote that article. And I didn't go into the details of how they found it or discovered it, but it did show, significant improvement in immune system and cognitive function in healthy subjects. So, I guess one of the questions Carrie and I have to discuss is what will we do with someone who is ill, who has severe autoimmune disease? Would we jump into this? I don't think so. I think we would be more circumspect and do. Let me just and do. I hope I didn't jump out of this meeting. Am I
Nope,
in?
you're still here.
Oh, good. That we would. We would probably do some time limited eating and let's say a more restricted diet where we would, let's say, really work hard to optimize the barrier function of their gut and the microbiome of their gut and reduce foods that might be stressful from an immune point of view. And then, only then, once they were feeling better, then have them do this type of diet.
Okay, so the article or the handout that I have up, you all have access to it. It's going to be in your Healthy account. You have to log in on a computer to get that. But this just shows you all the means to caloric restriction. People have gotten pretty clever with restricting calories. Some people will cut out breakfast, and that's what most people would consider intermittent fasting. But I think of the term intermittent fasting more as an umbrella term for any length of time that you're spent fasting or not eating, but not every day. Intermittent in its definition is not daily. So that could be instead maybe you do a whole 24-hour fast once every couple of weeks, or some people do 3-day fasts every couple of months. Dr. Ross does his 5-day Prolon fasting mimicking diet for 5 days out of every 30 days. So intermittent fasting is whatever you're willing to do. But the type of fasting we recommend everybody do is something called time restricted eating. So if you're not convinced you're ready to do a Prolon 5-day fasting mimicking diet, absolutely consider time restricted eating. So that's when you're gonna fast every evening from after dinner, ideally around 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock p.m. to the next morning, ideally 12, maybe 13, maybe 14 hours after that. The studies show that at 12 hours, you start to see some benefits because your body has run through its stores of glucose from the day before, and it starts to tap into some of your fat stores. Personally, I've seen many of my clients easily lose weight from just doing that every day, which is really wonderful because it's not too much of a shift in their habits. So the document that you have, let me go through it with you. It's just some background, a lot of what Dr. Ross already said, but in case you forget what the fasting mimicking diet is, it is what it sounds. It's a diet, you're eating, but it's mimicking fasting. So you're eating about, I think 700 calories at the lowest for 4 days, but the first day you eat a little bit higher. I think it's about 1,100 calories on the first day, and that's for 5 days. This tells you how many days or how many times you should do it, and that's really based on your health status. So I think Dr. Ross said he does it every month. I do mine every 3 to 6 months, depending on how I'm feeling. He already talked about this. This is the clinical studies. So the Prolon fasting mimicking diet, that's the only clinically studied fasting program so far. Couple of things about who should not do a fasting mimicking diet. This tells you, or you can see what you get in a Prolon kit. So it's mostly Mediterranean based. So you have soups, you have olives, crackers, you even have a little chocolate bar. And I believe the apothecary is offering 15% off these kits right now if you're interested in doing it while we're all at home. But I do want to let you know that if you cannot afford it, there are some ways that you could do a homemade version of a fasting mimicking diet. There's 2 options. This one is called the avocado diet, and it's pretty boring. You eat 2 avocados a day plus some other things. But that gets you pretty close to the calories and the macronutrients. This is the one I've done a couple times myself just because I like to cook. It's where you make your own vegan food, so vegetable-based food for all 5 days. You have to calculate the calories so you're not overdoing it so that you actually get the benefit. And I would recommend if you're going to do this, you work with myself or one of the other nutritionists so that we can calculate this for you. You want to make sure your fats, carbs, and proteins are dialed into where they should be. The point of this is to be very low in protein so you can stimulate that self-cleaning or that autophagy that Dr. Ross was talking about. If you accidentally eat too much protein on your homemade diet, you're not going to get those benefits for the immune system. So Dr. Ross was talking about what to do in between fasting mimicking diets. So let's say you take on 1 fasting mimicking diet a month. So if, days 1 through 5, you're doing the Prolon kit, and then days 6 through 30, you're going to eat more of a Mediterranean style diet. But you might want to still do 1 low calorie day a week, for example. So we just put together some recipes and meal ideas that would give you nourishing Mediterranean based foods, but be calorie controlled. So if we were in the teaching kitchen together, I would have made you all eat anchovies. That's Dr. Ross's, one of his favorite snacks. And they actually taste pretty good. They're not like the small, tiny anchovies you get on pizza that are really salty. These white anchovies are more mild, definitely not salty. So we serve those with basil pesto, with nice olive oil, put them on endive. Endive is this little lettucey thing right here. And they're like little tacos. Now, if you really don't want to try anchovy, you could put some salmon on there and still put the pesto on there. There's a smoothie that I do when I do my own fasting mimicking diet. I love chocolate and I don't want to not have chocolate when I do it. So this is my way to get some chocolate in. There's some unsweetened cacao powder and the blueberries in there, and the stevia drops help sweeten it up, and it's really a nice treat. If you choose to do a Prolon kit, or you want to even just use these bars in your daily life, these are the fast bars that come in the kit, or you can buy them separately. They're based out of nuts and seeds, a little bit of honey, and a little bit of coconut. They're pretty delicious. And then these are all vegan-based soups that you can get at the grocery stores. Fasting Mimicking diet is vegan, 100%. So day 1 through 5 is vegan. That's how you keep your protein low enough to stimulate autophagy and immune support. So if you're going to do it yourself, or you're going to just have a couple low calorie days in between the months of doing a Prolon kit, these are great. You know, they do have a little bit more sodium than if you were to make them yourself, but convenience is nice, and ingredients are pretty spot on, pretty clean ingredients. And then if we were in the kitchen, I would probably whip up these palmini noodles for you. These are fun noodles that I found at Sprouts 4 or 5 months ago. They're hearts of palm, so it's a vegetable, and they're cut into noodle shape. And it's the closest to pasta that I've had. You know, there's zucchini noodles, but they tend to be a little bit wet and soggy. These palmini, they don't get soggy or wet. So they make this great low-calorie pasta base. And then in class, I usually sear up some portobello mushrooms and toss in some of Rao's pasta sauce. And the mushrooms are nice and meaty, so it takes the place of any kind of animal protein or meat. But you have your vegan meaty element here. So a couple questions came in. How much are the kits? Yeah, the kits are about $200 for 5 days. But it mentioned you're on this call and you can get 15% off.
And you're basically eating about in 5 days. Everyone's variable whether they're going out to eat or not going out to eat, but you're eating about $75 to $100 worth of food in 5 days anyhow.
The people that don't have documents on your PC, just send me a message in Healthy and I'll make sure that I get them to you. Okay, and Cindy has a question. With intestinal metaplasia and anemia, is this not recommended? Pernicious anemia specifically.
You know, the interesting thing, if we do it while we're watching the individual, and let's say we did it, we had what parameters we were going to follow in an individual, if there was such that we could, whether it's inflammatory markers or some aspect, other biochemical marker, we could do it safely and see how you respond. For 5 days, it would be perfectly safe. It's not going to make your disease process worse. If anything, it should quiet and diminish the autoimmune response. But, you know, applying it to a specific disease process is not its intention. It's a health enhancing process. So, you know, I don't know what you're, you know, are you overweight or you're too thin? This is not something, for instance, in the very thin, a lean person who, let's say, whose body mass index might be around 20 if they're a woman. I don't necessarily think this is that great an idea for them. I think it's better just to do the time limited eating, etc. But what the nice thing about this is you don't lose muscle mass. So I don't know if that helps the person with the pernicious anemia.
Yeah, well, my other question with that was because I have malabsorption and I might be like 5 to 10 pounds overweight. But with the malabsorption, I don't know what I absorb at all. So I don't see my biggest goal is to get my immune status improved.
I think this idea would be useful. Again, I would I guess it would be nice if we knew specific parameters to follow and could indeed follow them, you know. And I guess with pernicious anemia, there are antibodies that one could follow to see if they go down or go up, etc. So, yeah.
Thank you.
One of the questions, is the food in the kit all prepared and ready to eat? For the most part, there are soups in there that you just have to heat up on the stove with some water. But everything else is ready to eat, like the bars, the snacks. There's some tea that you can just put some hot water on. And with the soups, you can doctor them up. The soups call for, I think it's 1 cup of water. I wanted to feel a little bit more full, so I did 2 cups of water. And then because I put 2 cups of water, the flavor got diluted a little bit. So I added a little bit of hot sauce, a little apple cider vinegar, and a little bit of spices.
Yeah. I like the Berber spice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Say it.
So there are no full meals, just soups and snacks. Well, if what you mean is an entree with like protein, starch, and vegetable, no, it's not like that. They are soups for entrees, plus on the side of the soup, there's some either crackers or olives. Am I forgetting anything, Dr. Oz? It's mostly
No, I think the bars, the crackers, the olives, the soup. That's it.
What was that spice? You just said Berber spice?
Yeah. Berbere. It's
Oh, I got it.
a Middle Eastern spice that somehow I've been adding small amounts when I have this, and all of a sudden it makes everything taste better to me. So
Is that sumac that they have at the kitchen?
No, it's different. Bear's a combination of spices, and sumac is just one spice.
Okay, thank you.
There's also the added the little bottle you get.
yes.
And I mean, that's, I find, really something that it makes me feel much better.
I agree with you that it has glycerin in it, and it's converted slowly to a little bit of simple sugar, and the specific goal of it is to prevent muscle wasting. And I agree with you. That's something I really look forward to drinking.
Well, and the other thing is the teas. It's really it's hibiscus, spearmint, and spearmint and lemon. I love the spearmint and lemon. You can find hibiscus anywhere, but the only kind of mint tea I'm able to find on the open market is peppermint. So I'm wondering maybe the apothecary could start to carry spearmint tea.
All right, we got about 2 minutes left. Does anyone have any final questions? Dr. Ross, do you have any final thoughts?
I do. Is there any way you can start a support group for this?
Actually, you can sign up for emails when you do this, and you get a great email every day that tells you most likely what you're experiencing and what to do about it. And there's a Facebook group. So yeah, there's a lot of good support.
I guess I'd like to get together with people and talk about, but probably most people don't like that as much.
I mean, I wouldn't, assuming enough people wanted to do this once a month, we could, the Wednesday, the 2 hardest days of this are the 3rd and the 5th day.
Right.
And whenever people said, enough people wanted to just join in and we all agreed to start on a certain day, I wouldn't mind getting together on the 3rd day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one last question. During this, assumably you don't eat anything else, but I drink tea all day long. So all my other teas I would not drink. And would I also not take supplements, my normal supplements?
I wouldn't, it's fine to drink all your other teas as long as you don't add anything to them.
Okay.
And the other supplements, I tend to give my body a break while I'm doing that. They give you a multivitamin and some oil, but I try to do what he suggests, so I don't take my other supplements.
Okay.
What do you do about
Prescription
medication?
meds, I would take the prescription medications.
Yeah.
Except if you have diabetes and you're on meds that may make your blood sugar drop, then I have to adjust the doses down during that time.
Yeah. For me, if I was to try this, I would want to have an appointment with Carrie first before I tried it because I have too many questions.
And that's fine. There are some other people asking about appointments, and yeah, we can absolutely make appointments. You can call the front desk for appointments. I will write the phone number down in the chat box, and my availability is pretty open in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to get started soon, you won't have to wait that long.
Okay, good. And Carrie, your face is not on the screen. Are you supposed to be on the screen?
No, I'm just hanging out in the dark.
I just want to say I've been doing it for more than 6 months now, and I think it really is, it makes you feel a lot better. And I've had a lot of people say to me, even my skin looks better.
Yes,
So,
yes. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, because I've been doing the time restricted diet for like a year now, where I eat lunch anywhere from noon to 2 o'clock, and then I eat dinner anywhere from 6 to 8 p.m. And sometimes I'll have a snack in between, but not usually. But I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm doing some things right, and I know I've been cheating a lot on what I'm not supposed to be eating, so I've gained some weight. So I just need to.
One of the things I spoke with Dr. Ross about this that I noticed is that in the days when you're not on the fast, sort of like the taste of salads, your desire for plant-based things sort of goes up.
Yeah. And it's been my own experience. That's exact for me. It's like I'm much more happier eating vegetables than denser food. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's like I always want meat in but I do the time restricted every day. I never go off of it.
Yeah, I seem to like think better after I've had some protein, some meat. And so I don't know if it's my blood type or if it's psychological, but
Yeah. Food doesn't taste good to me without meat.
food definitely affects my cognitive function.
Yeah. Although I can tell that I think better before I start eating during the day, like I think better in the morning before I eat anything. So quite interesting.
That's the effect of ketones. So that's an interesting observation. So when you do that 12-hour fasting overnight, your body eventually runs out of glucose. So it has a backup supply of body fat. And when it burns that body fat, you produce ketone bodies. And the brain really loves ketones. And it seems to run really efficiently and clearly with ketones. So, yeah.
I don't think I'm burning any calories though, because I've gained weight, but I know I've been cheating. So, but I don't cheat on my time limit, and I fast anywhere from
For me, I don't know.
14 to 16 hours a day. So,
Guys, I'm going to excuse myself because I got to go home and cook dinner.
thank you, Dr. Ross.
Thank
All
you.
right. If anyone has any issues with the documents, just email me. I'm going to put my email address in the chat.
Okay.
And I will upload the recording to Healthy for those of you that are getting everything.
Okay.
If you log into Healthy online, go to programs or packages, either one of those, that's where you purchase this, and that's where everything should be.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. I'll make an appointment with you.
One last question. Anybody who's tried the Prolon, were you hungry during those 5 days?
Yes.
Definitely, you get hungry, but you develop a different relationship with hunger. So there's a very unpleasant hunger, and then there's a hunger that all of a sudden, somehow, for me, what happens is that it feels like, wow, my body's healing, and it feels like a very active healing process to me.
Okay.
The best part of the day is at the end of the day, you just have a little soup. And it's amazing to me how great I feel when I'm going to bed those nights. I don't feel the least bit hungry. I don't wake up hungry. It's crazy. The only time I'd say I have hunger is about midday. And if I drink enough fluids, it doesn't persist.
Interesting.
Okay. So you keep the end in sight, and it's a virtuous fast.
I don't know. It makes me happy.
Mhm.
But I could do such a simple thing and create good levels of health for myself.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
You.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Carrie.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Dr. Ross.
Are you still there, Carrie?
Yeah.
It's Dell. I didn't have video for at least half of the session.
Okay, I'll send you the video.
Oh, all right. Okay, thank you. I don't know whether it's my computer or not. I don't know what the problem is.
No problem. Well, just log into Healthy and everything will be in there. The documents and the video, but the video won't be there until tomorrow. I have to upload it tonight.
That's fine. Thank
All
you very
right,
much.
have a good
Thank you.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Good evening.
Carrie,
Bye.
could I get your email address again, please?
Sure, it's in the chat box.
Okay. Okay.
The chat is on the bottom. Do you see it?
No, but I'll get it. Thank you.
Well, I can verbalize it. It's K Connell, KCONNELL
Okay.
at wrossmd.com.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carrie. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.